I was collecting plates at my mom's Christmas party, carefully balancing dishes as laughter and clinking glasses filled the room, when my stepfather's voice thundered above the noise. "The maid doesn't need to stand here. Get back to the kitchen." He pointed right at me, that smug grin daring anyone to step in. The chatter died instantly, eyes flicking toward me, some snickering, others pretending not to notice. That moment seared itself into my memory, not with shame but with a burning spark. I wasn't some nobody he could dismiss. Right then, I vowed to flip his world upside down. His words weren't my downfall, they were my fuel. I'd make him swallow that smirk, make him greet me every morning at his own company where I'd control his fate. If someone close has ever humiliated you, share your story in the comments, and subscribe to see how I made my stepfather bow to me. My name's Sarah Mitchell, and at 30 I've learned the hard way that family isn't always what it seems. Especially when your stepfather treats you like you're beneath him. Growing up in a small Tennessee town, I spent my childhood inside my mom's sewing shop, threading needles and hemming dresses to help pay the rent. My mom Susan worked her fingers raw keeping us afloat after Dad walked out when I was 7. We weren't wealthy. Most months we barely scraped together a few $100s, but we had each other. I started working at 15, folding clothes and sweeping floors after school, saving every cent for the future I knew I'd have to build myself. Mom always said I had her toughness, and I clung to that, especially when life got harder. When I turned 16, Mom married Richard Bennett, a high-profile media executive from Chicago who swept into our lives promising stability. He had money, a shiny car, and a daughter named Jennifer, 2 years younger than me, who looked at me like I was dirt on her designer heels. Richard moved us into a larger house, paid off Mom's debts, and acted like he owned us. At first, I thought he'd be a mentor, a father figure. But I was wrong. He barked orders like I was his personal maid, demanding coffee, telling me to clean up, while Jennifer smirked and scrolled on her phone. "You're good at this servant stuff," he'd joke, laughing like it was funny. It wasn't. Mom would look away, her silence cutting deeper than his insults. I'd swallow my anger, not wanting to upset her. Still, I threw myself into school, determined to prove I wasn't the nobody Richard thought I was. I earned straight A's, all while working double shifts at a diner to cover textbooks and gas. By senior year, I'd applied for scholarships to the University of Tennessee, dreaming of studying computer science. I got in with partial funding, a miracle for someone like me. But it wasn't enough. So I juggled 3 jobs: barista at dawn, library clerk by day, and waitress by night. I lived on energy drinks and 4 hours of sleep, coding into the early morning, driven by the dream of financial freedom, of a life where no one could look down on me. My roommate, Lisa Morgan, became my anchor. "You're going to outshine them all," she'd say. I held on to her words whenever Richard's voice echoed in my head. After graduation, I took freelance tech gigs, building websites, optimizing ad systems, and saved enough to move to Chicago at 26. I wanted to be closer to Mom, hoping time had softened Richard's arrogance. It hadn't. Their new downtown condo screamed luxury, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, but it felt colder than our old Tennessee shack. Every visit, Richard made sure I felt unwelcome. He'd interrupt me mid-sentence to hand me dirty plates or ask why I wasn't helping out, unlike Jennifer, who never lifted a finger. "City life too fancy for you?" He'd taunt, eyes gleaming with amusement. Jennifer joined in, mocking my thrift store clothes or asking if I still smelled like diner grease. Mom would plaster on a smile, urging me to get along, and I'd bite my tongue, not wanting to hurt her. But the cracks were showing. Each visit left me angrier, at Richard and at myself, for letting him treat me that way. I'd lie awake in my tiny Chicago apartment, replaying his words, feeling the weight of years spent trying to prove I was enough. Lisa, now my business partner on freelance projects, saw how much it ate at me. "You're letting that jerk define you," she said one night over pizza and cheap wine. "You built a career from nothing. He's got no right to treat you like that." She was right, but I didn't yet know how to fight back. I kept visiting Mom, hoping things would change. Instead, Richard's grip only tightened. He bragged constantly about his empire, Bennett Media Solutions, a $50 million company, pretending I could never understand his world. "Stick to your little computer stuff," he'd say, waving me off like a child. The worst was family dinners. Richard sitting like a king at the head of the table, grilling me about my work just to twist my words, make me sound small. Jennifer added snide remarks about my cute ambition, while Mom kept her eyes glued to her plate. I'd grip my fork, forcing a smile, determined to keep the peace, at least for now. But inside, I was silently roaring. I wasn't some small Tennessee kid anymore. I'd engineered campaigns for major clients, earned $30,000 a year on my own, and taught myself tools Richard couldn't even imagine. Yet to him, I remained nothing more than someone to boss around. Those dinners turned into endurance tests, each one shaving away at my patience until that Christmas party. The night he crossed a line I could no longer tolerate. By then, I'd already been fiddling with an idea. A tech platform for tailored ads, something that could upend the industry. I'd sketched it out in the dead of night, powered by coffee and irritation, but I hadn't treated it seriously. Not until Richard's voice exploded that night, calling me a maid in front of everyone. That was the ignition I needed. I left the party early, hands trembling as I drove back to my apartment, not crying, but resolved. I opened my laptop and began typing. Not just code, but a roadmap. I'd build something larger than Richard's empire, something that would force him to view me as more than a nobody. The next morning, I rang Lisa, my voice steady for the first time in months. "I'm done shrinking," I told her. "I'm launching a company and I'm taking him down." Every time I walked into my mom's condo in Chicago, I braced for Richard's jabs. Subtle at first, then keener, like a blade he liked to twist. He'd hand me a stack of grimy plates mid-conversation, saying, "You're good at this, Sarah. Handle it." I'd grit my teeth and do it. Not for him, but for Mom, whose weary eyes begged me to keep the peace. Jennifer, his daughter, made it worse, flinging her napkin to the floor and smirking as I stooped to pick it up. "Still got that small-town hustle," she'd sneer, her tone laced with scorn. I wasn't their servant, but Richard behaved as if I was born to serve. A nobody from Tennessee who'd never fit into his world of million-dollar deals and penthouse parties. It began small those first visits after I moved to Chicago. I'd arrive with takeout or flowers hoping to reconnect with Mom, but Richard turned every gesture into a power move. Once, while I was telling a story about a tech project that brought me $5,000, he cut me off. "Why don't you help your mother clear the table? We're done eating?" His voice was casual, but his eyes declared I didn't belong at their table. Mom looked down, stirring her coffee, and Jennifer muffled a laugh. I carried the plates to the kitchen, my face burning, telling myself it wasn't worth a fight. But each time I let it pass, Richard pushed further, as if testing how low he could make me feel. He craved an audience. At family dinners, he'd flaunt his success. Bennett Media Solutions, a powerhouse worth $60 million, contracts with Fortune 500 companies. And then he'd swivel to me with a phony smile. "So, Sarah, still tinkering with those little websites?" He'd recline, sipping his wine, convinced my freelance work was beneath him. Jennifer would chime in, asking if I'd upgraded from that thrift store jacket. Her giggles would ring out while Mom stayed silent. I'd force a smile, my nails biting into my palms, responding with numbers about my latest ad campaign that hauled in $10,000. Richard would nod without interest, already shifting the subject, dismissing me like background noise. Lisa could see how it drained me. Over coffee in my apartment, I'd unload about Richard's newest barb. Like the time he told me to mop a spill at a barbecue, saying, "You're used to this kind of work, right?" Lisa slammed her mug down. "He's a bully, Sarah, and you're letting him win. You're smarter than he'll ever be. Start acting like it." Her words lingered, but I wasn't ready to stand up yet. I kept visiting, hoping Mom would finally speak, but she never did. She'd hug me tight when I left, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Yet in Richard's presence, she vanished, her voice buried beneath his control. I hated it. Not just for me, but for her. The tension built for months, each visit a reminder of my place in Richard's hierarchy. He'd order me to fetch his coat or pour drinks for guests. tasks he'd never demand of Jennifer, who lounged on the couch, phone in hand, untouched by responsibility. Once, at a cocktail party for his colleagues, he introduced Jennifer as my brilliant daughter headed for Harvard, then gestured lazily toward me. And Sarah, she's helping out tonight. I was 28, running my own tech projects worth $15,000 a year. But to him, I was the help. His colleagues barely glanced at me, and I swallowed the scream rising in my throat, stacking glasses in the kitchen while Jennifer posed for photos. By late fall, I'd had enough of pretending it didn't sting. I'd built my life from scratch, coded apps for major brands, saved $20,000 for my own place. But Richard's voice still made me feel small. I started dodging their invites, claiming deadlines, but Mom's calls always pulled me back. Just come for Christmas, she pleaded. It's important to me. I agreed, promising myself I'd stay calm no matter what Richard said. I spent days preparing, bought a new dress, practiced how I'd talk about my latest project, hoping maybe this time he'd see me differently. I was wrong. The Christmas party was dazzling. Their condo glittered with lights and a massive tree, guests in sequins and suits filling every corner. I arrived early, helping Mom set up, arranging platters, pouring wine. Richard barely acknowledged me, too busy schmoozing with clients worth millions. Jennifer floated around, her laughter sharp as glass. As the night went on, I kept clearing plates, keeping things neat for Mom's sake. I was stacking dishes by the sink when Richard's voice sliced through the chatter. The maid doesn't need to stand here, Sarah. Get back to the kitchen. He pointed at me, that smug grin spreading like he'd landed the perfect punchline. The room went silent. Some guests glanced at each other, a few chuckled under their breath. Jennifer snorted, hiding her smirk, while Mom froze, clutching a napkin. I stood there, plates in hand, heart pounding, not with embarrassment, but fury. I'd spent years swallowing his insults, smiling through the humiliation, but this was different. He'd done it in front of everyone. I set the plates down carefully, met his eyes, and spoke evenly despite the fire raging inside me. I'm not your maid, Richard. His smirk twitched, but he brushed it off, turning to his guests. Just a joke, folks. Let's eat. The laughter resumed, but I was finished. I grabbed my coat, ignored Mom's whispered plea to stay, and walked out into the freezing Chicago night. In my car, I didn't cry. I strategized. Richard thought he'd broken me, but he'd just struck the match. I called Lisa before I even reached home. I'm starting that ad platform I told you about, I said, my voice steady. And I'm going to make Richard regret ever opening his mouth. Lisa didn't hesitate. I'm in. Let's build it. That night, I flipped open my laptop and began sketching the framework for Mitchell Analytics, a platform to revolutionize personalized advertising, something that could rival Richard's empire. I wasn't just doing it for me anymore. I was fighting for every time he made me feel invisible, for every moment Mom stayed silent, for the girl who scrubbed floors just to survive. Richard had no idea what storm was coming. That Christmas night, when his words branded me a maid in front of everyone, I didn't just walk away. I started running towards something greater. My laptop's glow lit up my small Chicago apartment as I poured my anger into Mitchell Analytics, the idea I'd been shaping for months. I wasn't just building a company, I was crafting a weapon, one that would make Richard see me as more than the nobody he mocked. Lisa was with me from day one, brainstorming over late-night calls, her voice alive with energy. This is your moment, Sarah, don't waste it. She was right, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed contacts, capital, and a plan sharp enough to slice through Richard's empire. A month later, I registered for a tech conference in Chicago, a risk that cost me $2,000 I barely had. The venue buzzed with investors, startup founders, and endless chatter. I felt out of place in my off-the-rack blazer, nerves twisting inside me, but I pushed through, clutching my pitch deck for Mitchell Analytics. It was a platform that personalized ads in real time, using live data to target audiences with precision. A true game changer. I'd already built the prototype myself, testing it with small clients who paid $5,000 for early access. The numbers looked promising, but I needed more than promise to take down Richard. That's when I met Karen Walsh. She was 50, sharp-eyed and authoritative, presiding over a panel on venture capital with a voice that hushed the room. Her bio read like a battle map. She'd started a tech fund after clawing her way out of a marriage where her in-laws treated her like an outsider. I stayed after her talk, heart-pounding, and slid her my business card. "I've got a platform that could upend ad tech," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She arched an eyebrow, studying me as if she could read my whole life. "Send me your deck," she said, tucking my card into her pocket. I left the conference buzzing, trying not to let myself hope. 2 days later, Karen emailed, "Let's meet. Your idea has legs." Our first meeting was in a downtown cafe, Karen with an espresso, me laying out the vision. Mitchell Analytics could scale for billion-dollar ad campaigns, I told her, showing prototype data that boosted client conversions by 30%. She leaned in, grilling me on revenue, 15,000 so far, and my bottlenecks, coding capacity and server costs. Her questions were merciless, cutting through my pitch but respectful, like she saw promise I hadn't fully owned. "You're onto something, Sarah, but you're playing too safe," she said. "With the right backing, this could be huge, bigger than the dinosaurs running this industry." I knew she meant companies like Bennett Media Solutions, and my pulse skipped. "I want huge," I said, meeting her eyes. She smiled, rare and approving, and vowed to connect me to her investor network. Karen kept her word. Over the next 6 months, she mentored me, introducing me to VCs who could fuel our growth. Lisa and I worked nonstop, her marketing savvy turning my code into a narrative investors couldn't ignore. We hired Mark Evans, a 32-year-old data scientist I'd met freelancing. His gift for algorithms made our platform faster and smarter. Together, we pushed Mitchell Analytics to handle 10 million ad impressions daily, bringing in 50,000 in revenue from mid-sized clients. The late nights blended into each other, coding, pitching, debugging. But every milestone felt like another brick in the wall I was building against Richard's world. Meanwhile, I kept my distance from Mom's condo, dodging Richard's invites with work excuses. Mom called sometimes, voice small and worried, asking why I hadn't visited. "I'm swamped, Mom. New project," I'd say, hating the half-truth. I couldn't face Richard's smirk or Jennifer's cutting remarks, not when I was pouring everything into the company. Lisa noticed me darken after those calls. "You're not just building this for you," she said one night, handing me a beer. "You're doing it for your mom, too, showing her you're more than what he says." Her words landed hard, and I refocused on the plan. Mitchell Analytics wasn't merely a startup. It was my exit from Richard's shadow. Then a break came I hadn't expected. At a tech meetup, a woman named Rebecca Hull approached me, 40, a tech journalist known for unearthing corporate dirt. "I've been digging into Bennett Media Solutions," she murmured. "They're in trouble. Bad investments, losing clients, hiding it from shareholders." My heart skipped. Richard's company, valued at $70 million, was his crown jewel. Rebecca handed me a USB drive. "Take a look. Might be useful for someone with your ambition." I thanked her, mind racing, and rushed home to plug it in. The files were a goldmine. Financial reports showing $10 million losses, emails about desperate loans, and a board scrambling to cover it up. I called Karen the next morning, voice trembling with possibility. "Bennett Media's sinking. We could buy it." She didn't laugh, she asked for the data. That afternoon, we pored over Rebecca's files, running the numbers. "It's risky," Karen warned, "but with the right strategy, we could pull it off. Their assets are still worth $40 million. We'd need a holding company to mask your involvement." Adrenaline surged through me. This wasn't just about proving Richard wrong. It was about taking his throne. Karen proposed Phoenix Partners, a shell she'd used for acquisitions, and offered $10 million of her own capital if I could raise $5 million from my network. The next 3 months blurred. I pitched every investor Karen introduced, showcasing Mitchell Analytics' growth, now at $100,000 in revenue, and the platform's ability to absorb Bennett Media's clients. Mark tuned our system to handle their scale, while Lisa polished a deck that sold a new era of ad tech led by us. We raised the $5 million, mostly from Karen's contacts who trusted her track record and the numbers. I slept little, fueled by coffee and the image of Richard's face when he learned the truth. Every contract signed, every dollar raised pulled us closer to flipping his world. By summer, Phoenix Partners had a deal. A $35 million acquisition of Bennett Media Solutions, structured so my name never appeared publicly. Karen's lawyers handled the paperwork, ensuring Richard wouldn't suspect until it was too late. I met their interim CEO posing as a tech consultant, probing about operations. He admitted high staff turnover, talent leaving because of management. I hid my smile, filing it away for later. When I left, I called Karen. "It's happening. We're doing this." She laughed, that rare sound again. "You're not just playing the game, Sarah, you're rewriting it." That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the signed acquisition papers, my hands trembling. Mitchell Analytics was now valued at $2 million on its own, but this deal would put me in command of Richard's empire. I thought back to that Christmas party, his voice, his smirk, his finger pointing me to the kitchen. He'd thought he'd crushed me, but he'd only made me stronger. I wasn't just Sarah from Tennessee anymore. I was the woman who'd make him greet me every morning in the office he once ruled. The stage was set, and I was ready to step into the spotlight. The boardroom of Bennett Media Solutions was all glass and steel, a shrine to Richard's ego. I stood outside it, heart steady but palms slick. Months of planning, endless nights coding Mitchell Analytics, raising $5 million and securing the $35 million acquisition through Phoenix Partners had led to this moment. I'd kept my name hidden, posing as a consultant to avoid tipping Richard off. But today, the mask would fall. I adjusted my blazer, newly bought for this day, and pushed open the door, ready to rewrite his world. Inside, Richard sat at the head of the table, gray hair slicked back, voice droning about quarterly projections. The board, 10 suits with tired eyes, nodded along, unaware their company had bled $10 million in losses. Jennifer perched beside him, notepad blank, flashing coy smiles at a young exec. Susan wasn't there. Mom never came to these meetings anymore. It stung, but it didn't surprise me. I slipped into a seat at the far end, unnoticed until Richard's brow furrowed. "Sarah, this is a closed session. What are you doing here?" His voice still carried that edge that used to make me shrink. I smiled, cool and deliberate, and opened my laptop. "I'm here on behalf of Phoenix Partners, the new majority owner of Bennett Media Solutions." The room froze. Pens halted mid-scribble, eyes darting between me and Richard. His face tightened, a flush creeping up his neck. "That's impossible," he snapped. "I'd know if my company was sold." "Who authorized this?" I slid a stack of papers across the table. The acquisition documents Karen's lawyers had finalized weeks earlier. "It's done, Richard. As of yesterday, Phoenix Partners holds 51% of the shares, valued at $35 million. Jennifer scoffed, tossing her hair. "Running a lemonade stand's more your speed, Sarah." Her laugh broke the silence, but I didn't waver. I pulled up a slide, Mitchell Analytics metrics, $150,000 in revenue and 10 million daily ad impressions. "My company, Mitchell Analytics, designed the tech that will integrate with your assets," I said, voice steady. "We've already signed contracts to replace your failing campaigns, saving this company from the $10 million pit you dug." The board leaned in, murmuring as Richard's jaw locked and his hands clenched the table. He rose, voice rising. "This is a setup. You don't have the experience or the capital for this. Who's really behind it?" I met his glare unflinching and gestured toward the papers. "Read them. Phoenix Partners is my partnership with Karen Walsh, a venture capitalist you might recognize. She's funded companies worth over $1 billion. Karen's name hit the room like a detonation. Even Richard couldn't brush that off. He sank into his chair, flipping through the documents, his color draining as the truth took hold. Jennifer's smirk vanished, eyes wide, searching her father for a comeback that never came. The board chair, a gray-haired woman named Ellen, cleared her throat. "Ms. Mitchell, you're claiming operational control?" I nodded, projecting another slide. My vision for Bennett Media: streamlined campaigns, stronger retention, and a culture of respect. Effective immediately, I'll oversee strategic decisions. Richard will report directly to me, and yes, that includes greeting me each morning at the office. Gasps rippled through the room, followed by a few muffled laughs from the braver execs. Richard's eyes flared, but he said nothing, his knuckles white. I'd planned that line for months, not to humiliate him, but to remind him who held the power now. Jennifer couldn't stay silent. "You're delusional. Dad built this company from nothing. You're just a glorified coder playing dress-up." I turned to her, voice sharp but even. "Your dad lost $10 million hiding bad deals. My platform's already pulling in clients you couldn't keep. Check the numbers." I clicked to a graph showing contracts with 3 major brands, each worth $2 million. Jennifer's jaw fell, then tightened, her face flushing as the board scribbled notes. Ellen nodded, impressed. "What's your timeline for restructuring?" 6 months to stabilize. "A year to dominate," I replied, feeling Richard's stare burning into me. When the meeting adjourned, the board filtered out, some shaking my hand, others whispering about the new blood. Richard stayed seated, eyes fixed on the table, pride shattered. Jennifer stormed out, muttering about small-town trash, but I didn't care. I was packing up my laptop when Susan appeared at the door, pale and teary-eyed. "Sarah, how did this happen? Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice cracked, and for a second I softened, remembering her Tennessee hugs, but I straightened. "I tried to tell you, Mom, for years." "You never stood up to him." She flinched, reaching for me, but I stepped back. "I'm sorry, but I can't keep pretending it's okay." She nodded, tears falling, and left without another word. It hurt more than I expected, but I couldn't carry her silence anymore. Richard finally stood, his voice low, almost a growl. "You think you've won? This company's my legacy. You'll destroy it in a year." I faced him, chin high. "Your legacy was failure. I'm saving it. Follow my rules or find another job." His eyes narrowed, but he turned and walked out, shoulders sagging, defeated. I exhaled, the weight of years lifting, replaced by a fire I hadn't felt before. Later at my apartment, Lisa and Mark popped open beers, toasting what they called the takedown of the century. I laughed, but my mind was already on what came next. New hires, client pitches, a staff handbook with a respect clause I'd insisted on. Then Karen called, her voice warm. "You didn't just win, Sarah, you changed the game. Ready for phase 2? Karen's voice carried a spark that matched my grin as I stared out at Chicago's skyline. "Born ready," I said. That night I thought of Richard's stunned face, Jennifer's silenced sneer. They'd underestimated me for years, but I'd flipped their world inside out. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about proving I was more than the maid they saw, more than the girl scrubbing floors in Tennessee. I hadn't taken Richard's empire to destroy it. I'd taken it to rebuild it, stronger, smarter, mine. And every morning when he walked into that office and said, "Good morning, Ms. Mitchell," it wasn't just a reminder for him, it was for me. I'd earned my place and no one could take it away. 6 months after I turned Richard's world upside down in that boardroom, I packed up my Chicago apartment and moved to Seattle. Not running away, running toward a life I'd built on my own terms. Mitchell Analytics was no longer a midnight dream. It was a global brand pulling in $2 million in revenue and serving 20 million ad impressions daily. I traded Chicago's gray skyline for Seattle's misty mountains, setting up our new headquarters overlooking Puget Sound. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a declaration. I was done living in Richard's shadow, done carrying his insults or my mother's silence. Seattle was my clean slate. Lisa came with me, her marketing brilliance pushing our campaigns higher than ever, while Mark stayed in Chicago to manage Midwest clients, keeping our algorithms razor sharp. Karen Walsh became more than a mentor. She was a partner, splitting her time between Seattle and San Francisco, guiding me through billion-dollar negotiations with brands I'd once only dreamed of pitching. Together, we turned Mitchell Analytics into a powerhouse valued at $10 million, with a team of 50 and growing every milestone. New contracts, new hires reminded me of that Christmas night when Richard called me a maid. He thought he'd broken me. He'd forged me. I didn't cut ties with Chicago completely. Bennett Media Solutions, now under my control through Phoenix Partners, thrived after the restructuring I'd promised. We trimmed inefficiencies, landed $5 million in new deals, and boosted morale with policies I'd written myself. Respect clauses, fair promotions, zero tolerance for egos like Richard's. He stayed on as an executive, his role reduced, but his paycheck intact. During my quarterly visits to Chicago, he'd greet me at the office door with a clipped, forced, "Good morning, Ms. Mitchell," eyes avoiding mine. It wasn't petty satisfaction I felt, it was closure. Each greeting was a quiet reminder of how far I'd come. Jennifer drifted out of my life. She'd called once after the boardroom showdown, spitting venom about how I'd stolen her father's company. I didn't argue, I just hung up. Her words, once sharp as knives, now barely grazed me. Mom was harder. She sent letters to Seattle, her handwriting shaky, apologizing for not standing up to Richard. I'd read them late at night, heart heavy, but never replied. I still loved her, but her silence had left wounds that needed time. Maybe one day we'd talk, but not yet. I'd built a new family. Lisa, Mark, Karen, people who saw my worth without me having to prove it. I poured myself into something bigger. Last spring, I launched the Mitchell Foundation, a nonprofit funding first-generation entrepreneurs, especially women from small towns like mine. We'd already granted $100,000 to 10 startups, each founder reminding me of my younger self, hungry, scrappy, underestimated. At our first gala, standing on stage under the warm lights, I told my story. I was called a maid in my own mother's home, I said, voice steady. But I didn't let that define me. You don't need anyone's permission to shine. Your worth is yours to claim. The audience rose to their feet, cheering, and I felt lighter, like I'd finally shed the last of Richard's chains. Richard's world kept shrinking. Rebecca Hall, the journalist who'd once tipped me off, published a piece about Bennett Media's near collapse, hinting at his mismanagement without naming me. Richard called, voice tight with anger. "You're ruining my reputation," he snapped. I laughed, a real unburdened laugh. "You did that yourself," I said. "I just saved your company." He hung up, and I never heard from him again. Except through those morning greetings, each one a quiet victory. He'd never admit it, but I'd earned either his respect or his fear. Seattle became home in a way Chicago never could. I bought a loft overlooking the water, filled it with books and art I chose. No more hand-me-downs from Richard's world. On weekends, Lisa and I hiked Rainier, her laughter echoing through the trees, while Mark visited monthly with Chicago pizza and bad jokes. Karen hosted strategy sessions at her beach house, her sharp wit pushing me to dream bigger. "You're not done yet," she'd say, and I'd smile, because she was right. Mitchell Analytics was just the beginning. I wanted to reshape the industry, to prove someone like me could lead without losing her soul. Standing on that gala stage, I thought of Tennessee, the girl threading needles in Mom's shop, the teenager juggling jobs to survive, the woman Richard tried to break. Every step, every scar led me here. I didn't need his approval or Mom's voice to feel whole. I'd built my own table, surrounded by people who valued me, and that was enough. My story was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming my worth, proving it to myself first. Richard's greetings were just the echo of a lesson learned. Power isn't given, it's earned. If you're watching this and someone's made you feel small, remember this. Your value isn't in their words. It's in your fight, your grit, your refusal to fade. Build your own path. Surround yourself with those who lift you up and never look back. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I went from being a maid in my mother's home to a woman who made her stepfather greet her every morning. You can rewrite your story too. Start today.